Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's Wednesday, it's June 5th. It is 5:22 in the morning, East Coast time, EST. We're going to be breaking down a 12-game MLB slate today in the DFS space. Yesterday was a very rocky return. I haven't played MLB DFS, I believe, since last Thursday, so it was about 5 days off or so. And pitching out there, Steven Strasburg and Max Fried, two players who got blown up in the first, two players who finished with like 8 combined fantasy points, none of which I got any of from Max Fried. So not great overall, but hit on some of the things with the bats was not enough to get me any of my money back. So that's a terrible return as always, but that is MLB DFS for you right away. So hopefully we can do better today. I thought yesterday's analysis was actually pretty good outside of the obvious spots that Steven Strasburg and Blake Snell not doing that great at the top end, right? But there's not a lot of things to predict the two best pitchers on the slate in quality matchups, really good matchups, doing poorly. So some of the other things I felt like were pretty good in terms of the analysis, but on both sides, the bats as well. People keep asking me for bats, don't have them this early in the morning, but when I could tell you things like, Reyes right now, I believe, as a lefty, is going to probably hit a home run today, and things like that. And then he goes and hits a home run. Aaron Hicks is a guy who I have at cleaning up and probably going to hit a home run today based on that left-handed batter splits, or if not, going to have success, hits a home run, things like that. Obviously, I don't get them all right, but there's some things that I can indicate at least early on, and that's the way you should be building your lineups, based off of the handedness, based off of the stacks, and things of that nature. So let's get into today's slate. If this is the first time to the channel, welcome to the channel. My name is Sal Vetri. I cover daily fantasy sports and just some other things in general. Fantasy sports in general, not just daily. In the NFL streets, NBA streets, NBA videos out. I will be going live tonight from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on YouTube, 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 on Sportscaster. All that information is over on my Twitter. I'm going to start to pin a tweet every single day that will tell you my content for the next day. And I'll have the date for what that next day is, just in case you're not sure if that is today or the next day. So make sure to follow me on Twitter. That's where I will have it. You can find it every single day, and let's actually go to it. You'll be able to find it every single day on my Twitter feed if you just go to my Twitter page right here. Content schedule for tomorrow, 6/5. MLB and golf video will be up in the morning. That's what I'm doing right now with this MLB, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Game 3 live on YouTube, and then I'm going to go on Sportscaster, another company that I stream on their platform, and I think it's a very great platform, so make sure to check it out. Let's dive into it. Hit that like button if you can. Subscribe and notification bell helps me out even more if you're getting any sort of value from this video. And let me know down below, who is that interesting type of player that you're going to be playing today? And I guess by interesting, I can say the below $7,000 player on the pitching slate that you're going to be playing today. I think there's a couple of guys down there that are definitely driving interest for me, and we'll talk to them, guys who might be maybe even extremely mispriced down there. So let me know, below $7,000, who is that pitcher? You can get into a contest for $20 PayPal. If you go over to my Sportscaster page, and all you have to do is hit follow. It's literally free. It's like subscribing. You get into a contest right now. About 20 people are in that. All you have to do is hit follow, and $20 PayPal. You don't have to do anything else. It takes about, literally, if you click the link in my description below, like 30 seconds. Let's start it off. We'll start on the top end. We'll figure out the five-figure guys. We'll talk through them. Then we'll go to the 9. Then we'll go all the way to the bottom to talk value before we get to that mid-range. So starting out, 11.6, most expensive guy in the slate, guys who are having an incredible year. Blake Snell went yesterday. Now his teammate Charlie Morton. Really good pitching staff right now for this Tampa Bay team. And 11.6 Charlie Morton, I think it might be a little bit overpriced compared to the other players on this slate, but I'm fine with it. We've been seeing pitchers get thrown up there. 11.9, I think a couple of pitchers I've been at. Strasburg was up there yesterday. So the matchup is the biggest reason why I believe he is where he is today, and this is a very good matchup, and I just updated all the data in terms of team hitting, and you're still going to get that this Detroit team leads the slate in strikeout rate. Now, obviously, we have to wait and see. It's like I said, it's 5:20 in the morning here on the East Coast. We have to wait and see what the lineup is. Now, one or two guys can be in or out, and that could bump or reduce that strikeout rate, but on average, they strike out 29.1% of the time. So that is pretty good. This is a ballpark that's going to play more so neutral, but if anything, hitter friendly at a 1.032 ballpark factor. I factor in for my ballpark factors. You guys might have different ones in your models, but I'm factoring in doubles, triples, home runs, and also I'm looking at it from a fantasy perspective. So the amount of points that pitchers are getting plus or minus in this ballpark. So when you see a 1 point, anything over 1 means that on average they're getting more than 1 point per actual fantasy point, if that makes sense. Anything below it means that, okay, if this is a 0.9 fantasy ballpark, then on average, instead of getting your 1 fantasy point per inning thrown on like a neutral stadium, now they're getting 0.9 because whatever it is, hitters are playing more friendly there, the fences are closer in, the wind blows out, anything that might be happening to affect it that year, that's how I get to that number. So Charlie Morton, I have interest in, but on a 12-game slate, And if I can be completely honest here, I do think that there are some other options on this slate that make sense. And I'm going to get to one of them, and it's probably going to be the most obvious one. But the matchup here, it cannot be ignored. He's going 5 2/3 innings per start. And when you get a matchup like this in Detroit, you should be able to take advantage of them and go into that sixth inning, which is where these starters and these guys who are 11-6 need to kind of get you to the sixth and seventh inning to really pay off their price tag. A 3.68 Sierra, that's one of the better ones on the slate. It's top 6 on this slate. It's something that blows you away. He is getting lucky based on his ERA, but solid Sierra still shows us that there's nothing to worry about there. Doesn't give up home runs. 0.53 home runs per 9. This is a guy who has the lowest home run rate on the slate outside of guys who are only giving up or have only pitched in 1 or 2 games. The walk percentage is a problem. 10% walk percentage, that's something that I do worry about. Hard hit percentage, ground ball percentage, fly ball percentage, everything that you want to see. His strikeout stuff is phenomenal, and he just doesn't give up power. So he's facing a team that doesn't have a ton of power and strikes out. So Charlie Morton, yeah, at 11-6, I'm interested in him early on. He's going to be somebody I try and get into my lineups, but we'll see how it kind of works out. And I don't know if I prioritize him when we have a guy $1,000 cheaper in Chris Sale on this slate. Tougher matchup for sure, a team that doesn't strike out as much. But $1,000 or $1,000 exactly cheaper for a guy who's a bigger favorite and probably has better stuff is interesting, and we'll talk about it. Number 2 is James Paxton at $11,300 today. I can't be playing James Paxton at this price point. His first start back, he pitched 4 innings. He was limited to 66 pitches after the injury. Look, James Paxton might have the best strikeout stuff on the slate. Now, Chris Sale's slowly getting and returning to form after a slow start to the year. But he might have the best strikeout stuff on the slate, and he faces a team that strikes out a ton, faces a team that has no power in these Blue Jays. And Chris Sale, 3.26. Sierra does walk guys similar to Charlie Morton, does not give up home runs similar to Charlie Morton, does not get ground balls, though, which is a problem. So there is more upside for him to actually get hit around, but I just can't play him because he's on a pitch count. You're going to play $11,300 for a guy who realistically might only throw 80 pitches today, which for him is probably getting into the 5th inning and nothing past that. I can't pay that much money for that. Sure, he can go out there, he can strike out 8 guys in 5 innings, he can get you 25 fantasy points, get the win. But if I'm talking about upside, winning a tournament, not just cash, and even at 11-3, it's just dumb to pitch a guy who's not on a full go. Now, if we get any sort of news, and I haven't seen any news on James Paxton, that this pitch limit is going to be lifted, then yeah, sure, you can play him. He's incredible today. And other than that, though, I can't be putting my money behind a guy who was limited to 65 pitches or limited to an under 70 pitch count in that last game, only pitched 4 innings. I imagine they work him back at least one more game in. Mike Minor's $10,800. He has a matchup that I'm not that crazy about, and I think that Mike Minor, although he has been pitching pretty well this year, he's not been pitching anything ridiculously outstanding, right? He has a 4 Sierra, which is good, but compared to his ERA, he's getting really lucky. He has just under an 8 walk percentage, which is not that great. It's not terrible. On this slate, it's not terrible, but it's not that great. 0.95 home runs per 9. That's around pretty much average, so that's not terrible. Nothing else really stands out. His strikeout percentage is about 26% on this slate, maybe a little bit above average. Doesn't give up a ton of pop to lefties, gives up some home runs to righties. And what I mean when I say pop is ISO, isolated power, doubles, triples, and home runs. That's what the ISO number is on here. But now he's facing a team that actually has been hitting a lot better on the year in this Orioles team, getting power at the top of the lineup with Mancini, with Nunez and whoever else might be in that lineup, and they don't strike out that much, which is a team, something that was happening more so at the beginning of the year. So I can't pay 10-8 for a guy who doesn't have the greatest matchup, but also doesn't have, yes, he has talent, but not any talent in terms of blowing you away with his strikeout stuff, and there hasn't been anything to indicate that will get any better. And I'm also worried about the park in Texas. This year so far, it has been playing as one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks. And a .71 park factor, that's below 1 by a very wide margin. You can see on my screen it's lit up red like Christmas morning. I don't know. It's red and green is Christmas. I don't know why I picked red. Red like there's a siren and it says stop. I'm probably not going to be playing Mike Minor. Chris Sale's the guy that, Charlie Morton, obviously, there's a lot of things similar to his teammate yesterday that are standing out here, and you're going, wow, Charlie Morton looks like the chalk. He's got a great strikeout percentage, hovering around 30%, a lot against lefties where there's some power from the left-handed side in this, limiting the left-handed Nico Goodrum for the Detroit Tigers. If he goes to the left side where he has a little bit more power, they strike out a ton. Charlie Morton strikes out guys. He doesn't give up home runs. They don't hit home runs. This looks like a pretty good thing for Charlie Morton. Yeah, but Chris Sale, $10,600 for $1,000 cheaper. seems like a spot where I might go to, especially if it gives me that extra salary. A 3.05 Sierra, the best Sierra on the slate, and it's by a decent margin here, which you're getting out of Chris Sale. That shows you that his ERA of a 4.35, he's getting extremely unlucky, so I like that. It means that he's actually being the most efficient pitcher on the slate in terms of giving up runs. Only a 6% walk percentage, 6.5. 1.45 home runs per 9. This is an issue. I think we saw him get hit for a couple of dongs against the Yankees last time out, not positive. But early in the year, a lot of these numbers are being weighted from his first 4 starts that are still sort of trying to level themselves out. But still has great strikeout stuff, striking 35% of righties out, which is something that you're going to get in this KC lineup. KC does have some lefties and powerful lefties in the middle of that order, but he's striking out 27% above the average of lefties as well. The problem here, and some stuff that is getting weighted from the beginning of the year, but also just in general, he's still having trouble with, is right-handed power. A 209 ISO against him is the 3rd highest on this slate in terms of right-handed power. That puts him in a ballpark in a group of people named Carrasco against Minnesota today. Right-handed power he gives up, and Mike Leach, who's just giving up home runs to everybody against Houston today. So Chris Sale being in that category is not great. Now, Kansas City doesn't strike out a ton. We'll have to see what their lineup is today. Chris Sale's strikeout stuff, I imagine, elevates his matchup no matter what. But when a team doesn't strike out, that means that it's a little bit worse, and that's why I think he's priced $1,000 less. He's the biggest favorite on the slate. Or actually, he's the second biggest favorite on the slate outside of Milwaukee versus Miami, with a 220 favorite against the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City, which plays more so to the hitters. So right now, there's a lot of things favoring Charlie Morton besides his price. There's some things that favor Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale overall skill set is better. I think Chris Sale, when you see things like his walk percentage being lower, when you see things like his Sierra being lower, are nice. Charlie Morton obviously in a better ballpark with a much better matchup and has similar, if not better, strikeout stuff. So the only thing here is the difference is, can you find that extra $1,000? If you can find an extra $1,000, I'd probably lean Charlie Morton. Only other thing I'll mention, they're both going about 5 2/3 into the games. Chris Sale is getting, as of late, more so into that 6th and 7th inning, though. So I like Chris Sale. I like Charlie Morton out of these top tier and really out of the 10K range once we get past Herman Marquez. If you have the extra $1,000, you can build out your lineups, get to Charlie Morton, in my opinion. If not, stick to Chris Sale. And I probably start by putting Chris Sale in there and seeing what bats I can get, because I don't think there's that big of a difference between Sale and Morton. On the year, they're only about a point and a half difference in terms of fantasy points per game. Herman Marquez at $10,300 to finish out the 5-figure price range. And if you want this sheet, you can get it on Patreon at any time. And if you have not subscribed yet and you like this content, please subscribe. Helps me out a ton. And go over to Sportscaster and follow. It helps me out. Herman Marquez at $10,300. This guy's been hit or miss, and this is not a spot that I want to kind of take a stand and play Marquez when he's $10,300, right? $300 less than Chris Sale. You have to kind of be crazy to go there. And this is not a matchup that says, oh, this is a miles better matchup for Marquez than Chris Sale's. No, Chris Sale actually has the better matchup here. Strikeout stuff is similar for both teams. He's facing Chicago, whose ISO is way better. We saw the wind blowing in Chicago yesterday, which led to a couple of dongs out there. You had Javi Baez just pimping a home run. It was absolutely incredible. Let's see if we can find it and show the people. Oh, look at this right here. I don't even have to switch that much. Watch this pimped home run by Javi Baez. Free TV right there. Bang. Oh, and it pauses right on the watch. Oh, that's incredible. And then he says, yep, let's watch that. Not sure if that's going to get copyrighted by the MLB. Hope not. Doubt it does. So, cool. Yeah, so, I don't want any Herman Marquez. I think that he's been good. His Sierra at 3.64. He's not walking guys, which has been really good. He's not giving up home runs, which is interesting because Coors Field, obviously, a mecca of home runs, but he's only giving up 0.95 home runs per 9. Really good stuff overall, striking out a ton of righties, which is what you're going to see in the Chicago lineup outside of your Anthony Rizzo's, outside of your Kyle Schwarbers at the top of the lineup, maybe an Addison Russell, I believe. But yeah, I can't get there at $10,300. So the 5-figure range, I'm really interested in Chris Sale and then Charlie Morton. That really shouldn't shock many people. Chris Sale, I'll start my lineups with and see if I can fit guys in. Let's go to the 9K range here. There's only 2 guys. Brad Peacock, 9,600. You have to start considering Brad Peacock here. He's been pitching extremely well. And another update is Houston just sent down Corbin Martin down back to the minors, and maybe you're going to get McHugh coming back, Colin McHugh, for this Houston team. But yeah, Corbin Martin was struggling coming up to the majors. I think he has a ton of talent still. I think you're going to see him back up here, just not right now. But Brad Peacock has been pitching really well. He gets a matchup today that's not great, but he's still a 160 favorite against the Seattle team. The Seattle team strikes at a good amount. It's in a ballpark in Seattle that helps the pitchers out this year. The second best ballpark on this slate, at least in terms of being pitcher friendly in fantasy point perspective. 28.7 strikeout rate. That's one of the higher ones on the slate again. And I imagine that we're going to see that sort of lineup out of Seattle today because they usually stick to their similar lineups. So you get a .206 ISO out of this team today. That's a very scary ISO number. That is the third highest on the slate, right behind Houston. I would kind of call them the second highest since Houston's ISO has been coming down over the past week. I just updated this today because they haven't had their big hitters in there. So Brad Peacock at $9,600. It seems crazy to pay that much money for Brad Peacock, but he's been good. His innings pitched and how deep he's been getting into games has been going up, so he's only getting on average 5 innings into the game per start this year. But if you look at the recent data, he's going a little bit deeper into those games, and that's great. He has a 4.08 SIERA, which is showing that he's getting a little bit lucky compared to his ERA. He's walking 7% of batters, which is right around average for this slate. Not giving up home runs, which is clearly good. Everything else is really looking decent. He strikes out righties at a good clip, doesn't give up a ton of pop to righties either, which is a lot of the lineup. A lot of what you're going to see in the Seattle lineup. Lefties get a little bit more pop off of him. Brad Peacock at $9,600. Probably not going to play him at that price point, and it's just because of the slate. I'd rather get $1,000 more for Chris Sale, and I'd rather go down in price, $9,600 for Peacock at that skill set. I think he is starting to become a better pitcher this year, especially over the past month, but he's not somebody that I'm going to pay $9,600 for. Carlos Carrasco at $9,000. This is a cheap price point for a guy who is considered an ace of the team. He's a 138 favorite today, but there's no way I'm playing him against Minnesota. This Minnesota team, even in tough matchups, is just ridiculously good. And in fantasy perspective, they don't allow pitchers, even good ones for that matter, to do well against them. Because even if that pitcher goes 6 innings into the game, they're likely striking out like 3 or 4 batters at most, and then they have to limit the production and not give up any runs to really be worth their price point. And at $9,000, a guy in Carrasco, albeit a 138 favorite, albeit averaging around 5 1/3, 5 2/3 innings per game, I don't want to touch him against this 22.3% strikeout rate of this Minnesota team, which is the second lowest on the slate, only behind the team that obviously never strikes out. I guess third lowest behind Houston, but the Los Angeles Angels, which we've been continuing to say how they never strike out. So Minnesota never strikes out. They have by far, yes, 0.3 percentage points higher, or 0.03 percentage points higher than any other team on the slate, a .236 isolated power. They're hitting home runs every single night, it seems, and they're hitting many of them. Last night, Marwin González, I got an update that he hit one. I got an update that the outfielder hit one. I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. I don't know why it's blanking me. So, yeah, and he's got like 20 on the year now. Yeah, this is not a spot, and it shouldn't shock anybody that I don't want to play Carlos Carrasco. He's got decent strikeout stuff, above average actually, but he's giving up home runs from both sides of the plate. Honestly, I do like the stack against him. I imagine Minnesota bats will be expensive in their starting lineup. Haven't looked at it yet, but if you can fit them in, both sides of the plate against Carrasco, he's giving up against lefties a 286 or 287 ISO, against righties a 215 ISO. Those are two of the highest numbers on the slate for either side of the plate, and they're both coming off of his expense, and now he's facing the team with the most power on the slate. So I think stacking against Carrasco here is actually an interesting play. I would not pitch him here. So that's a 9,000 and above range. Only guys that I actually want to pitch are Chris Sale and Charlie Morton. There's only one guy in the 8K range, so we can cover it because it's kind of interesting. Jimmy Nelson is returning today from the injury list. He has not played in the majors in about 2 years, since 2017. In 2017, though, he was averaging 6 innings per game as a starter, and he was averaging just under 7 Ks per start, which is pretty good. Now he started 4 games, but he's pitched in 5 games in the minors. He's averaging right around 6 strikeouts per. Or he's actually averaging 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, so that's ridiculous. 6 strikeouts per start or so, because he's not going too deep into the games. Averaging about 5 innings per start, but I don't know what he's only started 4 games. I don't know what he's pitched 24 innings, started 4 games, but it's pitched in 5. So I don't know what that other 5th game was, if it was a relief opinion, or if it was a long relief, or if he just came in for an inning in that first start to get stretched out a little bit. So this is a pitcher that is not your normal schlub in terms of starting their first game from the minors, right? This is a guy who had shoulder surgery and has been working his way back. He's a huge favorite, the biggest favorite on the slate, minus 250. Part of that is because he's actually a competent pitcher, or at least before this injury, and in the minors he's been showing that he's a competent pitcher. He's going up against Miami today. But he's $8,200. And this is a point where getting a guy who's coming back to the majors, even though he's facing Miami, who is a god-awful team. Although Miami's team ISO has been coming up. They're still well below average. The average on this slate, or the average in the majors right now to this date for 2019, is about a 0.17 ISO, and they're at a 0.113. By far the lowest on the slate, by far the lowest in the MLB. So nothing to brag about at all. But their strikeout rate has come down to 25.7%, and they're hitting more home runs. Brian Anderson goes yard last night. So they're actually improving as the year goes on, as you imagine they would. They wouldn't be a AA team all season long. Now they're to a AAA team standards, right? But Jimmy Nelson is actually a competent pitcher. I'm going to try and look more into him. It's always scary when you don't actually know what the leash is on this guy. Are they going to put him out there for 3 innings and use him as an opener? Are they going to actually let him stretch out? I don't know how many pitches he's been throwing per game in the minors. That's something that I really should have actually looked into and something that I will look into. 8,200 seems steep, though, for a guy of that nature. It's just the fact that he probably, if he just goes 5 innings, gets you an instant win and 4 extra points against this Miami team. Minus 250 favorite is ridiculously high. And he does have the strikeout stuff to get you there against a team that does strike out. Not as much as of late, though. So Jimmy Nelson at 8,200, I probably ignore him. I like the fact that a lot of people will probably ignore him because he has no other stuff, but he's actually a competent pitcher. So if you want to take his flyer on him in tournaments, I think he's more than viable today. Let's go to the cheap range before we finish up the 7,000 range. We'll go to 5,000 and 6,000. 2 guys in the $5,000 range. And there's some guys that are interesting below 7K today, especially if you're trying to go stars and scrubs with a Morton or Chris Sale build. Joe Musgrove, he's averaging 5 1/3 to 5 2/3 innings per game. He doesn't have the greatest strikeout stuff, nowhere near the greatest strikeout stuff. And he faces Atlanta today, a team that has a good amount of pop, ISO, and does not strike out. So I understand why he's so cheap down here, but he limits home runs, 0.69 home runs per 9. He limits the walks in around the 6% range in terms of his walk percentage. He just doesn't give up home runs, or he doesn't get strikeouts, but home runs to righties, his ISO is really good. Home runs to lefties and power to lefties, it's really bad. So you're in a situation here where I think a guy like Freddie Freeman or some other lefties in this Atlanta offense are going to be in a great spot to actually hit some dongs today at a .236 ISO to lefties. But $5,600 for Joe Musgrove, a guy who in his last start finally got to throw 100 pitches for the first time. I'm kind of excited about that. Now let's keep this real right now. He's $5,600, so I'm not saying, oh, he's going to go out there and score 20 fantasy points. No, he's only had really one good performance on the entire season. But I think I at least consider him because what I need out of him at $5,600 is realistically like 12 fantasy points. And what that means is just don't get blown up. You don't even have to get the win, although he's not a long shot to get the win. He is if you look at this matchup, he is a 106 underdog. That's pretty much a coin flip. The guy against him, Kevin Gausman, is a 122 favorite, so it's not like he can't get this win. He's been going 5 1/3, 5 2/3, so he should be able to be eligible for it. The matchup is scary, so at $5,600, I'd probably stay away. But if you're trying to go stars and scrubs, I think all the way down to Joe Musgrove is at least it's viable. I would say that it's definitely viable and live in tournaments. John Means at $5,800 against Texas today. This is one where John Means is now actually pitching deeper into the games. On the year, it says a 4.17 ERA or innings per game. But let's actually look at John Means the past couple of games because I believe he's been getting into the 5th more times than not and throwing 100-plus pitches more times than not. So you can see John Means, 4 or 5, I looked at this earlier, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight starts of at least getting into the 5th inning. And let's keep all of this in mind that he's only $5,800. I'm not trying to tout a guy who's $7,000 pitching this poorly. But at the same time, he's been pitching better as of late. He's been getting into the 5th inning in each of his past 7 starts, and he's a guy who's been able to throw the ball, right? In each of those past 7 starts or past 5 starts, he's been getting at least 90-plus pitches. 3 out of the past 4, he's been getting run out there for 100-plus. So here's the thing. Yes, he's not working efficiently with those pitches. He's a guy who is only giving up 6.7% walks, 1.15 home runs per 9. He doesn't have any type of crazy strikeout stuff, although against lefties, a 29% K percentage is pretty good. Joey Gallo will not be in this lineup, injured. They have a 201 team ISO, but I imagine that slowly comes down as Joey Gallo is out. And they strike out a lot. They strike out 28.5% of the time. This Texas team. So I think John Means at $5,800. These two $5,000 pitchers are in play. Now, if you're playing one lineup, which one would I choose? I might lean to John Means because here's the thing. When you get down to this range down here and guys are cheap, there's a couple of things that you want. You know they're not going to have good strikeout stuff. They're just not. That's why they're this cheap. You know they're not going to be great pitchers. They're not. You have to change your expectations. But there are 2 guys, and at least Musgrove in the last start got to 100 pitches. But John Means is probably the guy that I lean to. It's scary, right? You're in Texas, a ballpark that just favors the home run, but John Means giving up 1.15 home runs per 9 doesn't absolutely scare me. They do strike out 28.5% of the times. They don't have Joey Gallo. That's going to lower their ISO probably below the 200 mark, and that looks a lot better than 201. 29% strikeout rate from the left side of the plate. I like that. But the biggest thing is that he's going into games, right? Like I said, last 7 starts, he's gone 5 or more innings, and 3 of the last 4, he's been able to throw 100 or more pitches. And if that's the case, that means he's just going deeper into the games. If he's going to get you to the 6th inning at $5,800, well, yeah, I kind of like that. It's a tough matchup, but we're choosing between 5K pitchers or below 6K pitchers here, and it's not great choices, right? I think John Means has better strikeout stuff than a Joe Musgrove, and that's why I kind of get there, and I think that he goes a little bit deeper into the games. But I think both are viable today for sure. $6,000 flat. Mike Leach. There's no way I really get there today. With the updated data, this Houston team is striking out less. Believe it or not, this Houston team with these with some of these fillers in there, Tony Kemp and whoever else these other guys are at the top of the lineup, 3 or 4 fillers in there for your springers. I say this every day. For your springers, your Correas, your Altuves, your Diazes. These fillers in the lineup, they're striking out less. Their strikeout rate has gone over the past week or two. It was around 21-22% on the year, and it continues to go down to 20% as of today. Their power has obviously gone down. They were around a 215 ISO. They're slowly going down. They're around a 209 now, and I expect that to continue to go down, but nothing drastic. They still have power hitters in this lineup. And look, Mike Leach is this is a team that doesn't strike out. Mike Leach does not have any sort of strikeout stuff. He gives up power to both sides of the plate. I'm actually happy to stack Houston here. It's not a ballpark that favors hitting, but when a guy has a 275, the highest ISO to righties on the slate, and a 233 a very high, a top 5 ISO to lefties in terms of power given up, yeah, I'm very much going to stack against Mike Leach. He's a guy who does get a lot of pitches and goes somewhat deep into games. He's an underdog here, and I could see this being a blow-up spot for him. So no interest in Mike Leach. Dakota Hudson's a guy who is a 144 favorite today. This is more so because of the opponent that's going out there. But St. Louis versus Cincinnati, 144 favorite, a decent-sized favorite here. Some things that do stand out is he has a huge, very high. It's very rare to see a 60+% ground ball rate for a pitcher. He has a 61% ground ball rate, a 21% fly ball rate. So what does that say to me? Well, that says that his ground ball rate means that he's pitching to contact, which at $6,200 is fine. You're not trying to get tons of strikeout stuff, but he has no strikeout stuff, 0 strikeout stuff. And in fantasy sports, you need a guy who's going to get strikeout stuff. And if you told me, okay, at least he's not giving up any home runs, so if he's not getting strikeouts, he's not giving up any home runs, well, all he has to go is a little bit deeper into the games. Well, he's giving up 1.37 home runs per 9, and he's giving up 10% walk percentage, things that lose you points on the fantasy side. So nothing here about Dakota Hudson is really interesting to me outside of him being a favorite. He does limit the power to righties, but he gets crushed by lefties. So if you're playing Cincinnati today, I think that stacking them is more than optimal, more than fine. Playing Dakota Hudson, I'd rather go down to this below 6K range to Means and Musgrove, and I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot. Tyler Beatty, underdog here, has not been getting deep into the games. He got to go, though. He came back into the majors, and he pitched really well in his return start. Now this is his second start, and he's going to pitch at least in this game, and no, we're not sure yet moving forward. And who did he face in that first game? I believe, let me go to Beatty. And yes, there's going to be more stats for him, I believe, on the year, but he came back into the majors after 1 or 2 weeks off, and he pitched really well. He pitched 6 innings after being more of an opener with 2 innings pitched per game, and he got to start, he got to go into the rotation, he got 94 pitches. They allowed him to go a little bit deeper into the game, but here's the thing, he played Miami. Miami's a team that's going to allow you to do that. So when I'm looking at him on the year, his walk rate is way too high. He walks, he's only going 5 or 6 innings into the game, and he's walking 2 or 3 batters. So if you stretch that out over 9 innings, he's walking like 5 batters per game. He has a 1.42 home run rate. His SIERA is a 5.51. So even though he gets a Mets team that strikes out a little bit more compared to this Miami team, they have a much better ISO. I'm really not going to get here at 6,400. There's a couple of things that you could tell me, oh, this looks a little bit better. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that he's going to be going deeper into games, even though he got stretched out for 94 pitches in that last one. There's a lot of concern here for me on Beatty, and I'd rather go down once again to below the 6K range and save some money. Sandy here, I'm not even going to try and say his last name right now because it's 5 in the morning and I'm tired. He goes deep into games at least. He does work his stuff into the games. He has no strikeout stuff, so really he's just pitching to contact. But he faces Milwaukee today, a team that does strike out but has a ton of power. Not a guy I really want to run out there when I can go cheaper for $1,000. Don't want a guy in Miami who has no win upside against the Milwaukee team today. And really what I need him to do then is to get Ks, and he doesn't get strikeouts if he's not going to get the win. Where am I getting extra points for 6,600? Save the $1,000. Kevin Gausman, 6,700, extremely interesting. He went out in the last start, and in 1 inning pitched, he gave up 8 earned runs on 8 hits. No home runs, actually. And he's a guy who just really doesn't give up home runs in general. 1.07 home runs per 9. That's pretty good for these days in the Major League Baseball. He has a 5.56 ERA, but only a 4.49 SIERA. So not the greatest SIERA, but he's still getting decently unlucky. He's a 122 favorite today against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't strike out at all, really, but they also don't hit home runs. So this is a decent matchup in terms of his price point. He's sort of safe. He's averaging 5 innings per game, but outside of the last game, he's actually getting a little bit deeper than that, and he's been pitching well besides that last game. $6,700, I think he's in play. Actually, his home run rate is only a 0.82. That's what it was. His differential between his SIERA and ERA was a 1.07. So he has strikeout stuff to lefties. There'll be some lefties in the Pittsburgh lineup. I think Kevin Gausman at $6,700 is in play, and this would be the first spot that I would say, I kind of maybe want to go to Gausman over a Means or a Musgrove because, one, I think Gausman's just a much better pitcher than those guys. And I think that he has maybe he definitely has a better matchup against Pittsburgh than they do against Texas and Atlanta as well. So $67, wow, why can't I say that? What is happening? $6,700 Kevin Gausman in this matchup, coming off of a very bad start where I think a lot of recency bias will hit people when he was somewhat chalky. I think he's actually in play for me. Two more guys below 7,000. One guy at $7,000. None of them are interesting to me. I don't want Daniel Megden against the Angels. I never pitch pitchers against the Angels, especially when they have zero strikeout stuff and they get hit hard. So nothing there for me at 6,900. Anthony DeSclafani, he was actually pitching really well for this Reds team earlier in the year. And now he hasn't been getting deeper into games. I think that he'll kind of fix that and work around that. Only a 0.61 home run rate. Or actually a 2.32. I don't know what I keep looking at the differential. So differential says that he's getting slightly unlucky, but a 2.32 home run rate against a St. Louis team that is right around average in terms of their power, but does have guys in that lineup who can hit the power. We kind of called the Matt Carpenter dong yesterday. They don't strike out. He hasn't really been getting any strikeout stuff over the past month and a half of the year. So I don't want that at 6,800. I'd rather Gausman, or I'd rather go all the way down and just take my punt on Musgrove or Means. Jake Junis at 7K flat. Junis is a huge underdog today because Chris Sale is pitching, but Junis has been pitching well against good teams. I believe Texas and the Yankees, his last two starts, pitching decently well against them. Strikeout stuff has come up. Or no, I'm looking at Yu Darvish. Strikeout stuff is still down and not that great. Comes up from last year, I believe. Walks, though, too many guys. Junis is walking 9% of the batters, giving up 1.6 home runs per 9. Strikeout stuff, like I said, is coming up since last year. But he just gives up power and pop to both sides of the plate. Up 238 ISO to lefties. So I'd much rather have Boston here. It's so hard to stack Boston. 4 or 5 of their guys are always over 5K. There's no way you can get to them. But in terms of one-offs, get you a one-off Boston lefty here. If that's the way you want to go, they should have a lot of success against Jacob Junis. Nothing else that I really want to go to. I do like the fact that he gets, on average, 5 2/3 innings per game, but nothing else stands out to me. Yu Darvish is a guy that people continue to tout and love, and he continues to just suck it up. Now he goes up against Colorado, who actually is good. They have a 196 team ISO. They only strike out about 26.5% of the time, right around average. So you can say either way that that's good or bad for Yu Darvish. He averages about 5 innings per game. He's nothing spectacular. A 4.82 Sierra is nothing good. He walks 15% of batters. That's why this guy stinks. 15% of batters, and he gives up a 1.62 home run rate. So what you're telling me there is that he's not just giving up home runs, solo shots, he's giving up 2, 3-run shots. That's not great. His strikeout stuff, yeah, in terms of years back, it was great. He's striking out 28.5% of righties, 24% of lefties, so on average 26% of batters, which is right around average. It's nothing crazy. He's getting popped 233 from the left side, 164 from the right side, above average on both of those on this slate. In terms of bad, Colorado, I'd rather stack against Yu Darvish today. Look, he can go out there and he can finally regain his 3 or 4 years ago form that every single time he's pitching, all these DFS touts try and say, well, he has the highest ceiling, so I'd take him in this range. He hasn't shown it. He hasn't. He's been terrible, and now he's a terrible matchup. I'm going to stay away. Jason Vargas, I actually have interest in at $7,200 here. In that last game back, I think he finally, did he hit 100 pitches? I want to see this. I'm trying to get this pitch data from last game, but I can't seem to find a spot to pull it from. He pitched 98. He had 98 pitches, so he's been working his way back from an injury. You can see he pitched 50 in his first game back, and then 81, then 98. So he's been working his way back from an injury this month, and I kind of do like him here. He got 98 pitches the last time out. Now you're telling me he's going to face a San Fran team that strikes out right around average, but has absolutely no power in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. He's a 136 favorite. Don't look into this 4 innings per game number, because in 2 of those he was working his way back from an injury, and 1 of those he got injured. Sierra is terrible, 5.4 Sierra, so that's something definitely one of the worst on the slate. 11% walk percentage, hard hit percentage is up. All these things for Jason Vargas look absolutely terrible outside of his matchup, outside of his, I guess you can say, more recent form, but a lot of them are skewed because he was coming off of an injury and he was injured, so you're working with smaller sample sizes. He's not a great pitcher. He's 7,200. If you told me to choose, I would much rather save 500 and go to Gausman, and I would probably rather go all the way down to the bottom. But if you have the extra money, he's definitely in play for me. Trent Thornton against the Yankees. I don't really want any Trent Thornton here. His win upside is so low today. Yeah, there's just not much that I do want there. James Paxton, even if he goes 4 or 5 innings, whatever it is, the matchup here for Trent Thornton in terms of Vegas getting a win, he's a plus 178 underdog. That's not great. He doesn't work too deep into the games, 5th or 6th at best. 4.5 Sierra, nothing that's popping off the page, but nothing that's great. Another guy who walks too many batters, 11%, 1.5 home runs per 9, and he gets crushed from the left side of the plate. 267 ISO here, so give me your Aaron Hicks. If Aaron Hicks, who yesterday hit a home run, batting cleanup, is going to continue to hit here, give me your Brett Gardners if he's in the lineup. Guys who bat from the left-handed side of the plate, I want here against this 267 ISO. Now, the only good thing for Thornton is he does do better, a lot better against righties, which is where most of the Yankees' power comes from. Gleyber Torres, Luke Voigt, Gary Sanchez, all these guys, right? But I still do think that Aaron Hicks and whoever else you're going to put in there on the left-handed side, whoever's in the lineup today, Brett Gardner potentially, they are going to be in a good spot. I don't want to pitch Trent Thornton at 7,300 against this Yankees team. Martin Perez is interesting, $7,400. He's started off the year well. Now he's kind of regressing a little bit, I would say. Only .74 home runs per 9. He faces a Cleveland team that does not have a good ISO. The average ISO right now in the MLB is .17. They're at .148, so decently below that. They strike out a lot less. Their strikeout percentage is coming down. There was somebody around the 29 percentile range as a team. Now they're only around 26.5. Take that for as you will. $7,400 for Perez as an underdog. He becomes interesting, but not somebody that I really want to get to. The last guy on the slate, Felix Pena, finally starting a 120 favorite against Oakland. Oakland does have a nice team ISO rate, and they do have a good, in terms of, they have a .188 ISO. That's pretty good. They only strike out 22.3% of the time. That's one of the lower strikeout rates, tied for the second lowest with Minnesota on the slate. There's no way I can pitch Felix Pena, who has no strikeout stuff, to kind of make up for that matchup, to overpower a team that doesn't strike out. It's going to be really hard for him today, who doesn't go deep into games. I don't know why he's priced up to 7,800. He should be really in the low 7K range at best. He gets hit hard, so nothing here. So let's quickly recap where I'm looking at in terms of early spots to kind of take advantage of pitchers. And there's going to be more when I dive deeper into it, but pitchers that I like. I like Charlie Morton. I like Chris Sale on the upper tier. I start my lineups with Chris Sale, see what the stacks I get are with that extra 1,000. If I have extra money, I probably try and get up to Charlie Morton, but I'm not going to force it because I do think Chris Sale is in a fine spot here. He's the biggest favorite on the slate besides Jimmy Nelson. So that's what I'm looking at in the top tier range. Carlos Carrasco, I'd rather stack Minnesota against him. Either side of the plate. Lefties have a little bit more success, but both teams are absolutely destroying Carlos Carrasco. He's giving up 1.94 home runs per 9, and I don't think he has any shot against a Minnesota team with this much pop in a stadium that does not favor pitchers and they don't strike out. So I'd rather stack Minnesota against Carlos Carrasco from either side of the plate today. I'm absolutely fine doing that. Brad Peacock is just a little bit too expensive for me. I don't want anything against him in terms of batters against him, and I don't want to pitch him out there today. Going down a little bit, Jimmy Nelson is a question mark, and he would be the third guy that I would put in my player pool. He's 82. Oh, I missed Spencer Turnbull. I'm looking at this right now. Spencer Turnbull has been pitching really well. He's 8,600. He's going up against Tampa. There's a decent amount of things to like. He limits hard contact. He limits home runs just in general. Doesn't give up any. Strikes out righties at a good clip. Does not strike out lefties. Tampa has some pop at the top of their lineup. He's meh to me. He's in a price range where he's definitely playable, but you're probably not pairing Spencer Turnbull at 8,600 with a Chris Sale and really getting to any decent bats. But Turnbull, I would say he's also in a player pool for me. And then Jimmy Nelson would be in a player pool for tournaments, but I'm just probably not going to get to him. The matchup is the only thing that's nice. His first start back into the majors in a while, he can easily go out here, and they only let him go 3 or 4 innings, and they don't really want to test him out too much. So that's the third or fourth guy I would kind of put in a player pool. I don't really want anything else in this mid-range. I think Jason Vargas is interesting, but overall his ISO, just the way that he's been pitching on the year, the fact that he's opening up a little bit more in his matchup today is extremely nice, has interest for me, but probably not enough to get in my player pool, but I do think he's viable today. And then I go down to Kevin Gausman at 6,700. I do like him. He's probably my 4th or 5th guy in a player pool. And John Means and Joe Musgrove are 2 guys that I am going to look at. I probably have more interest in John Means just because he's facing an opponent that has a similar team ISO as Atlanta, but they strike out way more. Now, the stadium is really, really bad, but again, you're punting for a reason. You have to get lucky. So if he gives up a bunch of home runs, so be it. That's where I'm at. It's going to be probably a Stars and Scrubsy type build for me. I probably lean to Kevin Gausman if I can get to him, pairing him with a Chris Sale or Charlie Morton as of right now. In terms of bats and how to attack other pitchers, I would like to stack Houston against Mike Leach. That should be obvious to everybody from either side of the plate. I already said that I would like to kind of stack against early on Carlos Carrasco with those Minnesota bats. Some other spots to attack here. Trent Thornton, I would attack from the left-handed side with some Yankee one-offs, whether it's Brett Gardner. You can do a mini stack with 3 guys. Don't think you have to stay forced to all lefties, but just in terms of power on the year, he's giving up a 267 ISO to lefties and only a 105 ISO to righties. Now, obviously, all those righties he's facing are not Gary Sanchez and Gleyber Torres, so feel free to do a Yankee stack. I actually kind of like that as of right now. Other things you can kind of pick up on from the hitting side, I kind of like going against Yu Darvish here. You can stack him. You can do one-offs with Kyle Schwarber, who should be cheap at the top of that lineup, continues to hit for power, Anthony Rizzo, or you can go and do a full stack against Yu Darvish. He's been really bad from both sides of the plate in terms of limiting power here. If you can get up to a Boston stack against Jacob Junis, I would, but most likely you're going to have to force and settle for one-offs. If you're going to settle for one-offs, I'd go more so for the left-handed one-offs in the middle of that lineup, maybe a JD Martinez, even if you want to go there, because he does give up power to righties as well. That's about it. That's what I'm looking at right now. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on here. Tyler Beattie only had one start when he came back. You can go to lefties. Michael Conforto, if he's in the lineup today for the Mets, is in a good spot to hit a dong. Stacking Cincinnati against Dakota Hudson is also viable. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you guys. Thank you girls so much. Appreciate it if you could hit the like button, and you can follow me over on Sportscaster. It's the only thing I ask for. And you'll be entered into a raffle for $20 PayPal. So thank you so much. Peace out, gang.